Yeah, I'm Jackson. I have zero experience with carpentry.
I studied at a school for historic preservation in Boston and learned about how things were built, 250 years ago.
There's a long way to go. I'm nowhere near the top. Not that I thought I was, but there's so much more to do out there.
Welcome back to the Passion for Craft podcast. We are ready for another quiz. Richard and I are teaming up again to take down the cerebral giant of Brent's quiz, and we'll see what we can do here.
Cerebral giant.
I'm trying to cheat and look at his answers
But
here,
you
but
can't read
I
my
can't
writing.
read his writing.
I was going to cover these up, but then I saw it, gave it to Austin. He couldn't even read the questions, so I was like, I'm good.
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, so we started talking about modernism, and they wanted to say we'd never talked about modernism on the build on what's the show? The Build Show?
Yeah, nope.
On the Passion for Craft podcast. And so I've done some buildings and brews on this. You can go check those out. I've studied modernism mainly because I'm like what's the appeal? What's going on? When did it happen? Why did it happen? And all that kind of stuff. So we'll start out by asking these questions. When did modernism start?
Wait, can we start out? What is modernism? No, I'm just kidding. Do you like modernism?
I don't like it in residential, really. I'm okay with it in like civic architecture, like built some buildings. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like futuristic a little bit.
Yeah.
But as far as like a resident for me to live in, no. I like traditional.
What about you?
Am I doing this quiz or not?
Are you going to ask this question later?
I like some modernism.
So no, he wasn't going to answer. Okay. I don't like it either. I don't think it's great. It's kind of weird. I like it in buildings.
I think the
residential.
majority of modernism is bad, but I think the majority of home building's bad. And when I say bad, I mean it all sucks. I mean it's just not where it could be.
Puddle glum. No, I'm just kidding. That makes sense. Now we're ready. Okay.
Now you're ready to answer the question. You've thought about it. You've Googled
You
and
ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
I would Google it under the table this whole time.
you realize I asked the question, started this thing off, and then you went somewhere else.
When did modernism start?
Thank you.
Well, I want to know. I think people want to know. Do you like it? Do you not like it? But it's okay. Here we go.
Yeah, 1940s, I would guess.
I'd say earlier.
Okay.
I'd say like, well, what is modern?
39. You're
I'm
Price
just
is Right
thinking,
me.
can we define modernism a
Yes,
little bit?
good point, Jackson, because there's actually some steps that happen to get into modernism. So when does the first
He started with a trick question.
modern
again.
style start? And modern being a step away from conventional, classical, traditional architecture. So when did that?
I mean, you could consider a TP modern.
I would say
Step away from
after the
classical.
Great Depression.
I'd say before
That's
then.
1930.
So that's why I'm saying like 40s.
I'm pre-30s.
So there's a lot of people that think Frank Lloyd Wright and the Gamble House out in California and Stickley's stuff was the first modernism. So that's early 1900s.
Okay.
So,
Wow.
And then if you consider
Did not know
if
that.
you consider Art Deco, right, there's the Gamble House. Very different from that's 1904.
I'm okay with that. I kind of like that house.
Well,
Yeah,
we're used to that now, right? And so it's I love arts and crafts in this period. I love the bungalows. I love what they did. If you look at the Roby House, Frank Lloyd Wright, that is a clearly early 1900s modern house that was in Chicago, part of the Prairie School movement. Very different than the other houses that were being built in that period.
Yeah.
When 1904 is the late Victorian things, it's all these. That is so linear, right? It's so
Yeah, it is.
That's early 1900s?
Uh-huh.
Wow, I wouldn't have guessed.
So this is the first modernism, right? Look at the
That's totally modern.
Look at the cantilevers. Look at the horizontal lines. The emphasis on horizontality
Even
there.
the way they've done the brickwork is crazy.
Yeah. So what he did was he has all the brick running horizontal. And
Is that even stable?
The mortar, yeah, and the mortar is all raked horizontally, but not raked vertically. So what that means is you get a shadow line in the horizontal line, but not in the vertical line.
Is it a longer?
And he used a longer brick, which is called a Roman brick, which is like a 2-inch by 12-inch long versus a 2-inch by 8-inch long. And I think it actually might be like 1.5 inches by 12. It's actually even thinner than that. But notice the horizontality, the cantilevers, very modern. This people would consider early modernism. Now, the next phase of modernism, and you'll see this if you watch my Buildings and Brew, is the Art Deco. So Art Deco, like the Chrysler Building in New York.
Oh, that's a cool one.
Yeah, that's Art Deco. And so Art Deco was a attempt to recreate the basically look at classical proportions and classical details using other forms of ornamentation. And so you see chevrons and this sunray pattern, and you see there's Mayan influences and
is that the gargoyles off the side?
Other cultures. Those are eagles that are coming off the building that were pretty incredible. But if you look at the Empire State Building, the elevators, the interior of the Empire State Building is just classic Art Deco. Where you see these, and this was, there's the entry. Of course, that building is.
That's from Elf.
It's from Elf, exactly. His dad works in the Empire State Building, and so, but to see that sun pattern that comes out there, and see, the columns are still there, the pedestals are still there. It's still classical, but it's ornamented differently.
It's the marble and the granite, whatever that stone is.
So anyway, that too is. I would think we would all consider modern.
Yeah.
So Art Deco is modern.
I think most people would say it's modern for sure.
I like Art Deco sometimes.
And then you have the international movement, which is in the 1930s, and it was meant to be this universal language, okay, this universal style that everybody does, because it's called international because they didn't want to say it's American or
Spanish,
British
English,
or Spanish or what. It's international. It's this ubiquitous style that can be going across these other things. So modernism. When does modernism start?
Early 1900s.
You could say that it starts in the early 1900s, but it doesn't become this dominant force that defines our cities, right, until 50s or 60s.
So I got close.
Yeah,
I kind of won. So I won correct for me.
Yeah, second place for me. So what is 0 points for me?
We'll come back to that one. Who are the fathers of modern architecture?
Frank Lloyd Wright. He said that earlier.
Fathers.
Frank Lloyd
That
Wright.
guy.
Fathers.
Yeah, Frank Lloyd Wright's one of them. I'm thinking of the other ones. They're coming to me.
I know the mother.
Dowdy.
Just kidding.
I mean, he's certainly a modern architecture, but not the father of modern architecture. There's three.
Deco. Someone Deco.
No.
Tim Deco.
Yeah, that guy.
Brian Stone.
I don't know.
I'm making up names.
So there's three guys. Walter Gropius.
That's Walt Disney.
That's Walter Gropius. Mies van der Rohe. Mies van der Rohe, that's him. And then Le Corbusier. Le Corbusier, they just called him Corbu. And so we'll talk about those. Who designed the first glass and steel office building?
One of those guys.
Will you say their names again?
Walter Gropius.
Yep.
Mies van der Rohe.
Mies van der Rohe.
Mies van der
And
Rohe.
Corbu.
I'll go on Mies van der Rohe.
I'm on Mies.
Okay, that was a multiple choice question, and you guys guessed right.
Yes.
Where was it
25%.
built?
Oh.
Chicago.
South Carolina.
South Carolina.
Looks like a South Carolina guy.
No, he's actually.
He looks like the Kentucky Fried
It was
Chicken guy's
Chicago?
brother.
No.
What?
Oh.
No.
Oh,
Well, I get kind of credit. He's from Chicago, right?
nice.
In New York.
Oh, that
Oh.
makes way more sense.
Yeah.
It seemed too practical.
We're both like, I don't know, Chicago. Yours made sense. Mine didn't make sense at all. All right, okay. 0 for 2.
So the Where did these guys come from? What countries are they from?
Germany.
I would guess like a Nordic country.
Nordic country? Okay.
Might be weird.
Let's do it this way. Where's Walter Gropius from?
Gropius. Germany. Poland.
I'm just gonna say Germany.
Germany. He's from Germany.
I switched my answer. I should have.
Mies van der Rohe. Where's he from?
Germany.
Van der Rohe. I would say like Netherlands.
Yeah, that's
Really?
good guess based on his
Van?
name, but
Yeah.
no, Germany as well.
Gosh dang it.
And actually, would you Google that? Because now he's got me questioning. I know he taught. Okay, what's the famous modernist school that I don't know if Corbusier taught there. But the other two guys taught. What's the school they taught at? The Bauhaus. You've heard of the
No.
Bauhaus?
I didn't know. Well, I thought it was a hotel.
No, that's the Bauhaus is a school.
What is the Bauhaus is known for?
Bowing.
Really?
Like a military barracks.
Yeah, it does. Welcome to modern architecture. So here's the deal.
Yeah.
Okay, it's actually a crazy story. Okay, the
The
reason
Bauhaus is?
all of this is okay. How modernism comes to dominate, commercial architecture and everything else in the 1950s. Okay, is because of what happens in the 1920s and 30s. So. And it involves the most famous villain in all of the world.
Rockefeller.
The villain, Rockefeller.
I don't know. He had a monopoly. He was the first monopoly.
I think Rockefeller was.
Hitler.
Thank you. He's the worst guy ever, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking local. Couldn't think of an American villain, but that makes way more sense.
Is Rockefeller a villain?
I think so.
Really?
Yeah.
He was the first monopoly,
That's
right?
a whole nother rabbit trail. I don't know if we need.
I don't know. I mean, he restored Colonial Williamsburg.
Oh, he's a hero in your eyes.
I read his book, Titan,
Yeah.
on the life of Rockefeller.
Didn't he have a vertical monopoly? Like he owned steel production from the.
You're thinking of William Levitt with the building.
I was thinking of the I thought
Rockefeller
Rockefeller
Standard Oil. He had the oil empire when oil really blew up and everything else, and he did some bad things monopoly wise.
That's what I'm talking about.
But I don't think he's a villain.
Okay.
And I think, in fact, a lot of people. I mean, he was one of the great titans of business. Andrew Carnegie.
Carnegie was it.
Who's the guy? Vanderbilt, J.P. Morgan, all these great titans of business and everything else. J.P. Morgan banking.
Chase.
But I don't think they're villains. Anyway, so.
But the villain is Hitler.
Okay, so 1920s, okay?
Hitler was around. I guess he was around. He was on the come up at that point.
So Hitler actually served in World War I.
Really?
Yeah, and was deeply disgusted with how Germany capitulated at the end of the war,
Yeah.
and the Versailles Treaty, and just the way they got into so much trouble, and so he gets involved in politics. But before he was that, he was also an art student, and he was
A lot of people say a pretty terrible art style.
classical art student and loved classicism. So when his economic fortune or political fortunes were rising, he puts pressure on the Bauhaus School, which is a modern art school. Okay,
Where was it located? Was it in Germany?
it moved around. I think it ended up in Berlin, but it was in numerous places.
Okay.
Did you look at Mies van der Rohe? Was he wasn't from Germany? It said Germany. It does say Germany. Yeah. So
I snuck one in.
the van der Rohe got me thinking. So you actually had me guessing.
Oh
There.
for 3, baby.
So he ends up putting pressure on the Bauhaus School because he doesn't like modernism. Okay. Hitler. And
So he got one thing right.
as he rises to power. Okay.
Say what you will about Hitler, but he
cla-
hated modern
He was a
architecture.
classicist.
And
That is so terrible.
we're laughing, but here's the deal. Okay. When he rises to power, he hires this architect, Albert Speer, to run his. And you look at the architecture of Albert Speer. He was doing this this modern classicism. So there's an Albert Speer building, right? That this German world order, okay, that Hitler was planning, and the architecture was crisp, was modern, and was also classical. And what happens is that his buildings end up taking on this. The people associate, and this is a theory that people have, that people associate the fascism of this art. Now you're giggling. What are you laughing about?
I just can't get over Hitler had some crisp architectural designs.
It looks good.
Albert Speer did. But,
Albert Speer.
But Hitler certainly approved of it. But the classical architecture gets associated with fascism, okay, and gets associated with this governmental system of autocracy and dictatorship and everything else. Classicism gets smeared, okay, through Hitler.
It was a smear campaign.
Oh man! So he
only
screwed
did
it up.
It's no wonder, okay, that after the war,
Gosh, that's really pretty.
It's ordered. It's proud. It's beautiful, and so
that roof
anyway.
Terribly in the snow.
But because he got this smear, because its association with Hitler and the fascist government and everything he was doing, after they get out of the war, everybody looks at it and says, well, we're not going to do that again. Yeah. Right? Architecturally, there's no way we're going to go, reproduce those buildings. And so modernism opens up, this hole opens up for modernism to squeeze through.
That makes sense.
So he's screwed up in so many ways.
Yeah. He got it right, but
because he got everything else wrong.
So he actually closes the Bauhaus School, okay? And what do you think happened to Walter Gropius, who led the Bauhaus School, and Mies van der Rohe, who taught there? What do you think happens to those guys?
They came over here.
USA.
They came to America, okay? And where does Gropius end up?
Chicago. New York.
Boston. Harvard School of Design.
Is he the brutalism guy?
No.
Oh.
Harvard School of Design. He ends up teaching design classes at Harvard. This infiltration of modernism into American schools. Gropius goes to Chicago. He works at the ITT and ends up teaching all of his students and all that stuff, modernism. And so this modern ideal, right? Yeah. Which was remember the mindset of people at that time. We never want to go back there. We never want to have a world war again. War's terrible. What happened? Why did we fight? Because of Hitler, because of Germany, because of fascism. Okay, all of that we don't want to be a part of. We're going to go this way. And they go. Now, the Seagram's building in New York, which is a fascinating building, okay, there's like genius and challenges, okay? So the Seagram's building and the design theory that these guys are emphasizing is that we talked about false architecture, remember before?
Yeah.
Other podcasts, especially when we were talking about the old house. No, some people were talking about fakery. So the whole idea of this building, okay, is to strip away all the false facades. And let's get back to the simple bones, the simple, very simple nature of what the building actually is.
So we need to have a column topper because
it's steel and glass.
Yeah.
Okay. So the new materials like steel and the big sheets of glass that they're able to make today or make at that time allowed them to build a frame, okay, without a skin. And so it ended up being this incredible like philosophically, I love it. Yeah, let's strip it down. Let's strip the building down to its bare bones.
Yeah.
They did the same thing after the Victorian period when things were over ornamented. The arts and crafts was we're going to have this simple, honest construction, and that's what that was. It was honest construction. It wasn't these false skins that were put on top of buildings. So I love that, right? I think that's that's a cool concept. Okay, I get that. Here's the problem. When you do that, when you do 50 of those around a city, they all look the same.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's why downtowns and cities all look the same with these glass towers, is because developers come along and they go, well, we can do that. That's actually cheaper. That's actually
it's gotta be way cheaper.
it's actually cheaper to make. Actually, and we can be cutting edge and we can be modern and everything else, and it's not going to cost us as much. And so look at all that. Look at all those, steel and glass buildings. And the crazy thing is, like, the top half of that picture is all the steel and glass. The bottom half is all the brick and windows of the original buildings. And so
that has character.
Here's the number of things that happen. Okay, and here's the irony of modernism. Okay, it's supposed to be this cutting edge new thing. The buildings are incredibly hard to heat and cool. Okay, they cost way more money for these cities to operate
all the glass.
because it's all glass. It's an incredibly inefficient way to build. Like the Apple Store, right? The big glass box. It's a terrible building, building science wise.
Yeah.
Guess which buildings are the most efficient buildings in New York City?
Historic
buildings.
Buildings built before 1950 because they're brick, okay, and they're solid masonry, and you have so much more thermal mass there that holds heat and cool better.
It's like a greenhouse
than a glass thing. Yeah.
It is.
And so,
but they're cool. Like, it's cool going.
It is
an
cool,
Apple Store,
yeah.
But they're,
the other interesting thing, exactly. It's a cool concept.
there's no
right?
character to it, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Well, the problem is if everybody builds that, right? It's just like, so the beauty of classicism, the beauty of the
buildings around it,
is that the ornamentation, like the street level experience, okay,
The
streetscapes, the walking experience that you have in an historic district versus what you have in a new thing is completely different.
Yeah.
Because the scale, okay, of that modern building on the right. Look at the modern building on the right, the Apple Store, and then look at the one on the left.
Yeah.
Okay, that lower level is laid of the historic building. You have a balustrade, you have cut stone, you have a human scalable entryway going into that opening. Right. The only way you know where the Apple Store entry is the horizontal glass piece.
Yeah.
Otherwise, where's the front door? And
You're like walking around.
and then the building behind it. Where's the front door? Right.
Yeah.
It is a.
it doesn't communicate to you as
No,
welcoming or inviting.
if you look at these streets, these historic streetscape of New York, you see a very a human scale to the city streets.
Is
right?
that Times Square?
No, that's not. That's where
That's that iron building,
that's
right?
the Flatiron Building. So
I just saw the Y branched off street, because isn't that Times Square?
yes, but there's not a Flatiron Building there.
Got it.
In any case, so these problems with modernism is that it becomes very easily copyable, all right, and which makes our lives monotonous, right? Which makes our cities, that whole book, The Geography of Nowhere, that everything starts to look like a strip mall, and you don't know whether you're in Kansas City or San Diego or New York because it all looks the same.
Yeah.
And we don't have that individual character.
No individualism.
Okay, who designed the Barcelona chair?
Gaudi.
No.
Oh. I only know one chair maker, Sam Malouf. Probably not, though.
Nope.
Gaudi was in Barcelona. That's the only reason I'm guessing.
Yes.
Is that right?
No, it's
Oh.
not. This is the Barcelona chair.
So close.
Someone from Spain.
From Espen.
No.
Oh, is it one of the guys we already know?
Yes.
Oh.
Mies Vander.
Jean Bianco.
Walter Gropius, Lacabo,
Lacabo. That's the one.
or
Van Damme.
Mies van der Rohe. Mies van der Rohe. Okay.
Yes.
And so this is at the German pavilion in Spain. That's why it's called the Barcelona chair. It was a World's Fair, and he did the pavilion for the German architecture.
Nice.
And
What year World's
if you
Fair?
could pull that up, like 1929 or 1928.
Cool.
So he's designed that chair pretty early. Now I've got a book. I don't know if you've got that slide on design. Looking at how the Barcelona chair was designed, it's awesome. Okay?
Really?
There's classical proportions. So this was the World's Fair in Spain. Very classical, right? Look what the Germans do. Look what the German pavilion looks like.
Exposición Internacional de Barcelona.
So 1929, right? And then you look at the Barcelona pavilion by the Germans.
Is that a waterway in the middle of the town?
It looks like water.
It does, yeah. Like
It looks really cool. Looks like a boat's on there.
I don't know what that is, but you can see, how classical that whole thing is. This is what the Germans put together.
Oh my gosh!
So the Barcelona chair was in that pavilion, right? We're talking about
like a middle finger to the whole thing in a way.
It is, and you look at it and you're like, that was cutting edge and modern, and
that was 29.
29.
Crazy.
That
It
wild?
feels like that was
Cool.
built this year.
So it
does.
It's amazing, yeah. And there is, Jackson just said that again.
It looks like it was built this year.
So the thing here's the thing, is that
Tell us the
if
thing.
you look at modern architecture and modern architects and modern architectural schools, okay, their whole premise is that we need to be on this cutting edge. We need to be original. We're not looking at the past. We're going to be original. And originality is the the brass ring. Okay, that if you can be original, then you are cutting new. And so you think about a guy like Frank Gehry,
Yeah.
and his crumpled paper buildings, right? That's cutting edge, right? That's no one's doing that. He's doing things that no one else.
There's
is doing.
a reason.
Yeah. And so he
No one's doing that.
He is this level, okay, that of what architecture should be, of how we should be cutting edge. And so they're always pushing forward. But to Jackson's point, that Barcelona thing done in 1929, nearly 100 years ago, and we're still doing the exact same thing today. Okay.
Technically more like 96 years ago. But
No, it's so true.
So
That's crazy.
it's ironic that they sit there and claim originality, but they come out and they build these things and as if that's original. It's not original. It's been going on forever. And so
96 years, but not for. I mean, let's be technically. That's crazy though.
it's fascinating.
Is that granite in the middle, or some sort of like cut stone in the middle there?
I think it's a slab of stone, marble. I think
That's crazy.
It's so weird.
It's like the Apple Store in the 20s.
Yeah.
So, modernism. Like, what do we do with it, right? How do we handle it today?
Well,
right?
we throw it away.
So
dig it up.
I have mixed feelings about it. You asked earlier, what do you like it? There's some things I like. I think they're well, and we'll look at
Can
some
we
of
see
these.
some? Yeah.
Like the Apple Store is like, it's a tech, it's a computer, it's futuristic.
fits with
It
the-
makes
it
sense.
communicates
You wouldn't want
what
to
it
walk
is,
in there and
right?
see like classicism. I feel like it
Right.
just would not make
And
sense.
so they want to be cutting edge. We go to the Farnsworth House.
It kind of looks like a big iPhone, the big sheet of glass.
Now, this is the famous house by Mies van der Rohe.
This
okay?
is crazy.
And so the Farnsworth House was meant to be this open concept. Okay, those are glass walls. The little shell in the middle is the bathroom, the kitchen, and a bedroom on the back side over there. Curtains covered this up. It was placed in a terrible part of the city because it floods all the time. But if you look at this building, critically, okay,
Yeah.
the golden rectangle is all over this building.
Yeah.
Okay, and so
You're talking golden proportion kind
yeah.
of stuff.
So if you actually put the golden ratio over top of those those squares, those horizontal things laid horizontally, you actually
would
see
fit?
the golden ratio. Okay,
Wow.
and so here is a classical architect laying out things. Here's a modern architect laying out things classically, which is, and you can see
Wow.
those dimensions and how each one of those things is wonderfully proportioned, right? And so that you see this rhythm and this thing that you would see in a classical temple or the Roman building, yet here it is laying out in a modern building. Now, this is one of my great things that modern architecture would be great if they trained modern architects in traditional design, because Frank Lloyd Wright, Mies van der Rohe were both trained as classicists, okay? And that they put out modern things. You can put that same kind of organizational study of those buildings on Frank Lloyd Wright's buildings, and have this I look at the Roby house and I'm like, that's a beautiful house, right? The craftsmanship is great. It's an interesting design. It's not repulsive. It's the front door's hard to find, but it's still
because I would say like that's something that's missing from the whole orders conversation, right? Like one of the things that the orders does is it gives you comfort in knowing where you are in the space.
So there's a human scale, right?
You miss that here.
There's still a human scale, I would say, in this building. And so but if they would just train, and modern schools of architecture are so hostile to classical ideas because they don't think it's original, because it's going to the past.
And because Hitler liked it.
Well, so I don't know if they still associate.
They're associating it. I
mean, that's pretty
dude,
interesting that they reject classicism.
I would not expect. I was on the
that.
board of the ICAA, Institute of Classical Architecture and Art, for the Texas chapter, and we tried to go to the University of Texas and offer a weekend seminar on classicism. The faculty got together and said, "No, you're not coming here." Like, why? Why wouldn't you allow us to come there and teach these ideas of the 5 orders? No, you're not teaching that stuff here. There's a hostility to classicism at a lot of these schools, and so
that's crazy.
What is it about it that's bringing?
Well, I'm guessing.
Like,
I wasn't obviously in the room when they made that decision, but my theory is that it's not original, right? It is looking to the past instead of looking to the future. That's not what we're trying to do. So,
well, what's crazy is like if you go through you should be blown away. I did like a little bit of research on like the Afghanistan and like Pakistan. There's classicism all throughout those countries.
Yeah.
We're not shown that in our media. We're just shown like a sand pit, but those people had like the empires and the kings of the past.
Oh my gosh.
They had all there's temples that ISIS is like tearing down, and people are like, those are World Heritage sites, but they're terrorists destroying it, but it's like so well laid out, and they're
crazy.
It's beautiful,
but it's just dumb to say.
So, in any case, where I was going with that is that I believe if modern architects were trained in traditionalism and classicism, they would build more beautiful buildings. The problem is that Corbu was crazy, and
really,
and
that explains why he liked architecture.
His buildings are weird, okay, and he had this vision for. That's his most famous building. That's a chapel.
That's so
what?
And obviously it's organic, right? And so it's in the haphazard nature of the windows and everything else.
Yeah.
Where's the front door? Just that
needs to be taken down. That's horrible.
So
that's just very funky.
It's he did things like he had a vision for the city, okay, and his vision was that the city of Paris gets knocked down and then we rebuild it in this new modern, world order, right? Yeah. And so that you would have this, and he had all these pods, and he'd have all these, that families would live in these clusters, and so you have all these little clusters like laid out. Where people would live, but
that's the wall 1.0.
It is
the line.
That is like a dystopian future, right? I mean, those towers of where everybody's supposed to live in the same spaces and the same things, right?
Yeah.
So he was just out there, okay, and so his vision for things was a little bit crazy. And so the things that he designed, the buildings that are still around, are weird. Yeah. And so it's anyway.
So funny. So I think it's just helpful to look at some of these photos of their works, because we can talk about the guy all we want, but
that's fine.
The visual medium is kind of
so
helpful.
When Gropius went to Harvard, this is the house he built outside of Boston
for himself.
This was his
really
house.
Bad.
It's what's interesting is that if you look at the inspiration for what he was designing and building from, that is a German pillbox from World War I. Okay, now a lot of these guys fought in World War I. Okay, and were associated with World War I.
What's a pillbox?
it's basically where machine guns and people could hide and shoot at the enemy, but they're obviously very ugly functional buildings.
So did they just have a mold that they brought around, pour concrete in really quick?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I know that they were heavily engineered to take direct fire and things like that, and the Germans were obviously great engineers. Mm-hmm. And so but there's people who will basically say that Gropius had post-traumatic stress disorder.
Wow.
And that you see it in his work, and you see it in if you look at his buildings, as far as the antisocial nature of this building. That you think about the picture of the house that the little kid draws with the chimney and two windows and a window in the front door. It's very symmetrical. They've done studies and shown that kids in every part of the world, when they draw a house, they draw that same kind of house.
Whoa!
And so it's not just an American,
That's
Leave It to Beaver world. It's like everybody draws that. Well, what's going on? We're reflecting ourselves. Okay, so we're reflecting a symmetrical. Because we're symmetrical. When you think about the Greeks and Romans did, their buildings were very symmetrical because they were copying the human body. Whoa. And so for a young kid to draw, a house, he's essentially drawing a picture of, his psyche, his human self, and he draws something that's very familiar to him. This is something that, the researchers look at today and say, this was designed by someone who had post-traumatic stress disorder. Because there's nothing inviting about this. It's very hidden and guarded. It's, it doesn't communicate. It's not, anyway. And so
it looks like a pillbox.
It's antisocial. And so people look at that and say, well, gosh, it's actually very much like those pillboxes he served in.
Yeah.
And there's desks that show that he was sitting behind a desk, and where the light is exactly the same way that when they were a pillbox, they'd have the shells here and they would shoot out the window. I mean, it's almost the exact same kind of layout.
And that window size looks like the window on the pillbox.
It does.
It's like a little cut.
And so it's a to think that some of our greatest architectural heroes were designing things that were very cutting edge, but maybe they were cutting edge because they were loco, right?
Yeah.
Because they were crazy, and not because they associated that with individuality, with creativity, with originality, and that's the cutting edge. That's the direction we want to go. So I'm poking holes in the problems with modernism, and I don't hate modernism. It's just the magic is gone, right? It's just everything is beginning to look the same, cheap, fast, inexpensive.
Yeah.
So there's been a number of studies that offer hope for architecture, because there's been a lot of people have written books on architecture, beauty, and neuroscience. Okay, and neuroscience is, and there's they studied the brains of these things, and there's that slide about World War I, the outcome, and these people and their brains. But basically, they've got availability in science today to study eye movement. So that person right there is a student, and he's looking at a computer screen.
It's a girl.
And what did I say?
You said he's looking at a computer. I think it's a she. Anyway. So she's looking at a
computer screen, and they have a camera pointing at her, and they're tracking her eye movement. And that's where her eye goes, okay? And so they track all these points on the building where her eye goes.
Wow.
And so...
And then the order, is that those numbers the order in which she went?
Yes, that's the number and the frequency with which... And it's like over a 2-minute period or 1 minute period.
And so the size is the period.
Yeah, and so cool. Then they show like the number one place that most people's eyes end up is right there, and right in the middle, right? The doorway where you're supposed to go in. It's very symmetrical. It's very, the building has been designed to kind of draw your eye to the middle.
Right.
And when I talk about classicism and I say it communicates, right? This is how it communicates.
Yeah.
It's communicating, the importance. It's communicating hierarchy. It tells you where you're supposed to go. Now, look at what happens on a modern building. So this is a modern building, Queens Library. This is in Queens, New York. Where do you think the eye goes?
Oh man, that gap on the right, or all the humans in the picture,
or that ad over there on the right. Look at it. Go back. Look, your eye's attracted to that yoga pose, and the people on the left, and not the building.
It's attracted to something symmetrical.
And it's something
the
human.
lady is yoga pose.
Something human.
symmetrical,
Yeah.
And so, there's your eye's not drawn to this thing. So we are now designing
That is
buildings
crazy.
that actually distract you, that actually cause you to look in other directions and in other ways. There's another building here. So these are two things. It's a Italianate garage, carriage house, and a library. Okay, a modern library. Look where the eyes are going. Okay, the eyes are going to the two windows and to the front door of that carriage house. That's the pictures right below each thing.
It's
Look
just how
where
symmetrical.
the eyes are going on that thing. They're going everywhere but where they're supposed to go. Okay, there's nothing drawing you to the door of
the
that
entrance
building.
is the bottom right on that building.
The entrance is the bottom right. The library return thing is over there on your left. The book
my
return,
gosh.
and so we're designing buildings that aren't pleasing. We're designing buildings that are repelling.
Yeah.
Right. And so, these are the problems with this modern idea. And I'm hoping that this neuroscience study actually reminds us that, beauty is something that orders us. Beauty is something that causes us to calm. And a lot of these guys who write about neuroscience talk about the fight or flight, that they'll show a picture of a snake and immediately people are like repulsed and want to move away. It's the exact same thing when they show them pictures of they're not scared of it, but they are repulsed, and as opposed to seeing something beautiful and being attracted to it.
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
That's so wild.
So it sounds like modernism can be done right, but
Yes.
when it's done wrong, it's like when
wanna-
classicism is done wrong, it's really bad.
I'm like sitting here. I'm gonna
And
go
harmful
film
for us. I
myself.
mean, part of the things that they're saying is that this is bad for our societies. This is bad for human beings, right? This is not. We're not creating environments that are beautiful that people want to live in.
right.
And we have every opportunity to do it.
I want to download an eye tracker on my computer and then film a video of me looking at a bunch of good
That would
modern
be cool.
buildings and then bad modern buildings and then good classical buildings as well, and just see what it does, because this is fascinating.
So what is the what's the point? What is the
is the point?
The thing is that a lot of people today are designing this kind of house, okay, because of these modern principles. And classicism is kind of, I have a lot of clients who will turn their nose up to a carved molding or something, high style classicism,
Do they work at UT? Is that
because they are looking at that going, ooh. And in my theory, the Brent Hull theory, is that they were going, ooh, because it's done so badly, over time, that people don't want to be associated with that.
For sure.
Right? Most carving, okay, in houses today ends up in mobile homes, right? And not in the very high style houses. And so people are anxious about doing an egg and dart molding. I mean, it's one reason I can't keep Vossel. I mean, he's busy, but I don't have orders for the next 3 years for Vossel, right? People don't know what to do with a carver, right? People don't know what to do with it. What do you mean? What could I do?
so impressive?
And so this ends up taking its place. Now, again, this in my mind is a house that's very cheap. Now, it's just like the modern developers in the 50s and 60s looked at that. The Seagram's building was like, well, dang, I can do that. I think that a lot of builders go, well, dang, I can do that. And there's no ornamentation, there's no order, there's
that
no
would
harmony.
go quick.
It's just all these slanted kind of hip, cool. This is a fad in my mind. It's just,
for sure.
And these things are going to be so dated, so quick.
Yeah. I look back on, well, not look back, but, the cemetery over here. What is it called? It's across from Brahms.
Yeah, Greenwood.
Yeah, Greenwood. They have their original buildings. They look nice, but you see the new one they're building looks like garbage. I'm like, you guys are gonna regret this so much in 20 years. It just looks like a school.
Yeah.
I'm like, this does not say cemetery. It does not say serious.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think we're gonna look back on this. We're gonna look back on all the cool hip things that we're doing with schools, and it's going to be like,
Well,
what
and
were
so
we thinking?
And so what I think's happened is that classicism good traditionalism has been lost, okay, and it's been forgotten, and the lost art of building that I'm always talking about in my videos. People have forgotten how to do a proper pediment. They've forgotten how to build columns. They've forgotten how to do these things that used to be, grade school level stuff. It was interesting. Austin pulled up for one of my talks what AI would generate when he typed in these things. So on the left, he typed in Philadelphia Georgian house style, and then new house built in colonial revival style.
Okay, am I crazy, or do some of these look kind of good?
They're not terrible. They're not terrible.
Because I feel like we don't have any character like these houses have currently.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, they have character to them. They have like style and a thing. Like there's some choices that are made.
You have to dial into to some individual things.
Right. There's 5 windows where it's like
these aren't terrible. Okay. Go to the next one. This is where it gets terrible. Okay. So this is on the left. He's diagram of the Georgian interior molding package. And there's nothing Georgian in there, okay? That is a Victorian interior if there ever was one, and a bad one. In fact, this is the reason our clients turn their nose up to get to a carved molding, because they see stuff like this, and it's just gaudy and heavy and thick and not proportioned well, and it's just gross.
So to add just a little bit of flavor on here, the reason the AI works is it does like a search of it in and of itself in all the areas that it knows, and it goes and looks up how do we replicate this thing that they're looking for right here. And so across all of the internet that exists right now, this is the compilation of what a machine can put together for Georgian.
I don't think it's what a machine. I think they're associating pictures that say Georgian on them and tying those images to the thing. And
but it's not Georgian.
Most people don't know what Georgian is.
Right.
Like I was talking to a historic architect at Thistle Hill, and someone had described Thistle Hill as a Georgian revival. I was like, I don't think it's Georgian. He goes, yeah, people don't know. And it's not Georgian. It's a neoclassical building. It's not a Georgian building. And so it's most people don't know. And so AI, if it's just collecting data that's out there, it's no wonder it's going to show us stuff that doesn't make sense.
Wow, that is interesting. Well, let's bring it back to modern houses today.
So where we end up is with houses that are built today that try to be the Apple Store, right? With huge black windows and things like that, and the door manufacturers and many manufacturers. And this is one of my pet peeves about building today. Is you go to the International Building Show, and it is a whole lot of the same thing, okay? It is a whole lot of huge glass walls that can move back and forth, and nano doors and all these other things that
What's a nano door? I want
one. It's like a big sliding accordion glass door. It's actually
what's it called again? The conference?
International Building Show.
What's that? Okay, that's accurate.
It's a good, yeah.
Irritable bowel syndrome.
It's accurate.
Or I'm BSing you.
So they, everybody is chasing after things. Okay, the manufacturers are chasing after the latest hot thing, which is the accordion doors, the door that open up to the outside, right? The outside living room. They're incredibly inefficient, and they really only work in a climate like California, right?
Yeah.
Where it's dry,
so
and it's
nice weather.
It's nice weather most of the time. It doesn't work in Texas. We got bugs. We've got humidity. I mean, my wife would no more want a door open, to the outside than Maybe there's 2 days
That's
out
what I
of
was
the
gonna
year
say. You maybe have like a couple days where you could do that.
where you could do that, where it's really calm and nice and pretty, but it doesn't work here. And these manufacturers are showing off how big their windows can be, and the whole black window thing when we were talking about windows at your house. That whole black window trend is driving me up the wall. I see these traditional houses.
The black window trend?
Well, they're basically the steel window got really popular for a while. The steel window. And putting in steel windows and doors became this really hip thing, especially 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
The wood window manufacturers copied that by just making their mutton bars and everything else black. Okay, so that it looked like they were putting steel windows
Yeah,
in
they
their
did.
thing, but they ended up being so that it's basically a wood window painted black. And it's just like oil rub bronze of the 1990s
Yeah.
that was so popular that looks
Yeah.
terrible today.
Yeah.
Those black windows, like there's one, right? They're just are just stupid,
The
right?
modern farmhouse.
Yeah, and so you
Wait,
end up,
modern and farmhouse? That's
Farmhouse
a
modern.
farmhouses aren't modern.
Yeah.
So you end up with these styles today, okay? And there's further confusion. I don't think there's these names in our industry like the modern farmhouse. That is a trend, but it's really not a specific style.
Yeah.
And I think in 10 years we're going to look back and go, what style is that? Just like we look at houses from the 70s and go, what house is that?
Well, everyone now is already saying shiplap is done. You know,
That's
And
so
so,
funny.
and so, like this house doesn't know what it wants to be, right? It's just you got these horizontal lines below, and then the vertical lines above. It's a mix mash of this, peaked roof versus a horizontal line cutting through it. That's a modern, neo-modern house, and so the point being is all of modernism today just confuses architectural styling even more and confuses. I get a lot of consultants or a lot of clients asking me to consult to help them fix their house because the architects aren't being trained in traditional design. The builders don't know what they're doing. There's very few people that understand traditionalism and classicism. And so
It's fascinating that people are reaching out to you to go, hey, help, something's wrong with this. Help me out diagnose it and get it down.
yeah, no, it's a problem. I mean, the architects don't know. That was my
Right.
point. And
Right.
so it's just they get the end of the line with their houses and they go, yeah, something's still not right. It's just
Yeah.
not working. And I'll go through and I'll pick out 5, 6, 8 details that I'm just fixing that gable end return. I'm fixing the size of that dormer. I'm fixing the columns. I'm fixing the entablature that the columns support. Maybe 5 traditional things that if they just understood a
done it in the
little
first- yeah.
classicism, the house could be 90% better.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's just a
So you're
guys.
saying people should just consult with you way more.
No, I'm
because
saying that modernism confuses the design aesthetic,
Yeah.
and that it makes it harder to understand what our houses should look like, and what a neighborhood should be,
Yeah.
and what design is all about.
Well, thank you guys for watching the Passion for Craft podcast. Hope to see you next time.